Yeah, yours is.
I like we're muted right now.
Oh, no. You know what, though? I figured out that the mute doesn't work.
Really?
For some reason, they can still pick it up, so I have to edit it. It's not a big deal, but
Well, hello world, if you can hear me.
I'm not live yet, so. What am I doing, Ben? You
Going
distracted
live.
me.
Sorry. You're live on Facebook. I mean, YouTube.
Yeah, for some reason, you. Hi, guys. Welcome to Threads Podcast, Life Unfiltered. Thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited to have our friend Jalicia in the studio and having a little chat. But first, Ben's going to tell people that maybe don't know about Threads or what we're about, a little rundown, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Well, good evening, everybody, or good day to you if you're listening to this on our audio version of the podcast. Wherever you may be, whatever you may be doing, we're glad you took a minute to stop by. Threads Podcast Life Unfiltered is a chance for Jason and I to have meaningful conversations about things that matter, things that may not often be discussed in an open environment such as this. We want to create a space where it's okay to be open, honest, transparent, authentic, and doing so without a fear of what are people going to think of me. It's a place for growth. It's a place for reflection. All of those things is what we're trying to accomplish here on the Threads podcast. We get our name from the idea that there are threads that tie each one of us humans on this planet together, whether that's the thread of shared interests, the thread of things that make us happy, whatever the case may be. There are far more things that tie us together than separate us. And so we want to create a space to focus on what ties us together in a world that seems bent on dividing us. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you to our guest, Jalicia, for being here. I want to make sure I'm saying that right.
No, you're not. I was going to correct you when you were done talking, so I just...
Go for it.
I was just going to roll with it.
No, never roll with it.
Nope.
Be confident in yourself and say, no, that's not my name. That's not...
Jalicia.
Jalicia.
Yes.
There we go. Not Sha. Got it. I'll make a mental note. Excellent. So sometimes we bring in guests and guests with a story to tell or a background that we can learn from. And so Jalicia is friends with Jason and Megan and actually works with Jason's wife. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity to bring her in and get to know her a little bit. So that's the goal of tonight's episode.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about in the last couple of weeks is the 3 buckets that we want to focus on. That would be mental health, uncomfortable conversations, and faith. So tonight we're going to kind of focus on the mental health and uncomfortable conversations. So, Jalicia, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to talk to you. I've heard so much about you from my wife. All good. All good. All good. She really loves you. So
I love her too.
yeah, and so it's kind of cool to actually meet you and and chat with you a little bit. So why don't you tell me a little bit about, maybe how you met Megan, what your role is for work, and just kind of a little biography of what makes you tick and what got you from 0 to however old you are. I'm not going to ask.
32.
32. Okay, cool.
I met Megan about 7 years ago.
Okay.
She is our educator in the NICU, and we met each other and just clicked, and we've been friends ever since.
Okay.
She's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you. I think so too. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
I am from the Grand Rapids area,
Okay.
born and raised. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. I love people so much. I'm
Yeah.
very passionate about mental health,
That's awesome.
and I think that's what kind of shoved me into being a pretty big mental health advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll talk about a little bit later. So where do you have any kids? Are you married?
No kids.
No
Single.
kids. Okay. Yeah, we were single, or not single. Ooh, better edit that one out. We were kidless this week, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It was just such a great break to just get home from work, and not that our kids are a lot hard, but just to not have to have that mental
Right.
spot to be like, okay, now I gotta not deal with them, but like I need to give myself to them too.
Right.
And so yeah, it was a good break. We ate out a lot, had some steak.
Yes.
That was amazing. We hadn't had steak in so long. I'm like, I'm not spending money on steak for those kids. Right.
Do your kids like steak?
Yeah, they do. They
Oh.
do.
Very
Good.
nice.
So I'm going to be an annoying producer, and you are so quiet. And so you got to get right up on
I'll
there.
get real close.
There you go.
Okay.
I can turn you up a little bit more, but then it's going to be distorted. So I'm sorry to be annoying.
I'll get creepily close.
There you
There
go.
you
Yeah,
go.
be
Perfect.
creepy.
Okay.
It's okay to be creepy
Yeah.
most times.
Yeah, most times. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Mental health, that is something that Ben and I push really hard. We always say we peer pressure people into therapy. So when we have guests
Nice.
come in that don't, we do it lovingly, of course. When we have guests come in that don't go to therapy, or it just gets brought up, we say, hey, man, it's super helpful.
Yes.
Tell us about your battle, if you have, I assume you did, with mental illness, or I hate that word illness.
Mental health. What mental health challenges?
Yeah, you wrote illness, and so then I just read.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm like Ron Burgundy. Like, I just read what's on the teleprompter.
Right.
So with mental health, so like I said, Ben and I both see therapists. Mine was just on a maternity leave and is back, and so I haven't seen her in a long time. But tell me why you're so passionate about mental health.
My issue started when I was 12 or 13 years old.
Okay.
Just the very hard stage in life for a kid. Just lots of peer pressure, lots of comparing myself to other girls that I was not as pretty as them or as smart as them. And I just got really, really down on myself. And then I started to self-harm. I would cut.
Mm.
And I did that for a long time. One of my teachers found that out, and then they kind of forced me to do like therapy in school with the school counselors, and at that point it wasn't beneficial.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to go.
100%. You got to be ready to
Right.
work on it.
So
for
I
sure.
went because I was forced, but it
Right.
really wasn't beneficial at the time. And the older I got, the more I realized that people are very ashamed of mental health issues.
Agree.
They're very ashamed. They don't want to talk about it, especially in the Black community.
Yeah.
And also other minorities. They struggle. I feel like white families they can be more supportive
Mm-hmm.
in that aspect.
Why do you think that is in the Black community? And like you said, I think it's all Latinos and Hispanics. It's kind of the same thing. Like, you just don't say anything. You just,
Right.
you just fix it. Do it
Right.
yourself. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because of our history,
Mhm.
and we've been through so much, so we're just expected to get through things.
Yeah.
Right. Just
Like
pull
just-
yourself up.
Exactly. And get through it. I've heard so many times, just pray about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a Christian.
Yep.
I do believe in prayer. There's a lot of work that has to go with the prayer.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for people to realize that you have to treat it as if it was any other type of illness
Yeah.
or disease. Like you wouldn't tell someone with cancer, well, just pray about it. It'll
Right.
be fine.
Right.
Like that's not how it works.
Yeah. I wish somebody would say that to me. No one's ever said it to me, but I would be like, you going to pray that broken arm away?
Exactly.
I mean, not going to happen, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, it's helpful. Like, and that's where I think people that maybe are anti-religion or whatever, they're like, it doesn't even help. I'm like, yeah, it does help, but you still have to do, we're still human. We still have to do
Exactly.
human things, like
Right.
fix
Yes.
things.
Yeah. I've always looked at prayer as almost like seeing a chiropractor. Like when you go to the chiropractor, your body's just out of whack sometimes because you've overused it, you've overworked it. Things just get bumped out of where they should be. And so when I think about prayer, I think prayer is very, very similar to that of it's asking God to put us back together. Like
Yes.
God has this intent and this idea for our lives.
Right.
If we follow that and if we seek Him, He'll align things and things just
Exactly.
kind of fall into place.
Right.
So, but we've got to be, we got to do the hard work of
Yes.
acknowledging that we've got some stuff we got to sort through and get adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an empty pray it away and
Right.
hope for the best.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm so glad that you joined us. And first of all, you just dove right into the deep end on the first question, and I just want to say thank you. Like that's just meaningful to me, not having met you before tonight. Just your openness and willingness to talk about your experience growing up with the cutting and the self-injury and things like that. I guess my follow-up question to that would be, what would you say to 12-year-old you as you currently are now? If you could go back, or if that's too difficult, maybe think of somebody who is that age, that 11 or 12 years old. What encouragement could you share with them?
You are more than you think you are.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful.
And it's so hard to get caught up in all the fads and the trends, and you want to be like this person or that person, and it's not even important.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. Even I know when I experienced with high school, like everything was so important in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was everything.
Right.
And then you got out, like a week after you got out, you're like, why did I care about like
Exactly.
1 week? And you're like, this was the stupidest thing. Like life
Right.
is so much better outside these, these four walls. And
Yes.
it's how do you tell that to a kid?
Exactly.
That's the problem. Like, how do you say it'll be fine? I'm telling you, it'll be great once you get out. I mean, yeah, it's adulthood, so there are some challenges that come with that.
Right.
But you don't have to worry about, Jim Bob, who is, messing with you anymore because he's
Exactly.
going to be gone. But it's tough to explain that to a kid that's going through the bullying or whatever.
Exactly.
So in your, through your cutting and all that stuff, like, can you kind of talk about your journey to, I mean, we're all in like this, like, I feel like I'll go to therapy forever. So not that you've been healed, but you're obviously in a better place you were than
Yes.
you were then. Can you tell me a little bit about how that went and, what along the way was beneficial to you?
That part, when I was a teenager, that was harder. That was a hard struggle getting through those years.
Yeah.
My parents were very supportive and loving, but they're much older. Like they had me when they were older.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So they are from a completely different generation.
Yeah.
And people just didn't do that.
Yeah.
So they were kind of lost at what to do.
Of how to help you.
Yes.
Yeah.
They would do the very best they could.
So
And
in high school, they were like, we're not going to see, like they just said, go see the school
Right.
counselor. Like
Right.
there wasn't anything outside the school, correct?
Right. It's like whatever they could do that they felt would help me.
Okay.
That's what they did.
All right.
And you kind of just do the best you can until
Yeah.
you learn better. And
Right.
then you start to learn better and do better. And like my mother in more recent years has been studying more about mental health
Okay.
Oh, wow.
just to have a better understanding of it.
Yeah. Do you think that's in large part just due to your experience?
Yes,
That's
because she
awesome.
wants to understand more,
Yeah.
and she is very supportive.
That's so cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit. So I come from a family where we just kind of swept things under the rug.
Hmm.
Like, you just don't deal with stuff, you just push through it, you
Right.
know? And I just got to a point in my life in high school where I couldn't sweep anything. I mean, that rug was full.
Right.
And
Exactly.
my mom has always been maybe not always understanding of the way of handling mental health, or but she's always been supportive, and she's always stood behind me. And we've had some really good conversations where she's, coming to realize that mental health is a struggle for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And my wife and I have 2 adopted children,
Okay.
and there's a lot of trauma to be worked through. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just so cool, the family dynamic when your parents see you or your kids struggling, and instead of running the other way, they try to learn and grow. So
Right.
I think that's an incredible thing your mom did.
Yeah, for sure.
So
How
let's go.
about, sorry.
I want her to finish her progress into today of how your mental health improved and
Yeah.
what you did along the way.
So as far as the cutting, it just continued, and then it was almost like an addiction.
Okay.
Whenever I was angry or upset or sad, that was like my first coping skill that I would go to.
So, what does the cutting do? I'm curious to when you do that. Is it just it's something else to focus on, like because it's painful?
Yes, but also I had so much mental and emotional pain that
Yeah.
I really didn't even feel it.
Really?
Many of the times when I would cut, I just needed to get it out. I always felt so numb.
So it's like an emotional release?
Yes.
Or okay.
And in my mind, I wasn't hurting anyone else.
Right.
So as long as all that pain was directed to me, I was okay.
Hmm.
Looking back, I know it was hurting everyone around
Right.
me that loved
Right.
me.
Everyone who cared for you. And
Yes.
yeah, that's hard.
But there was just a point where I just didn't want to keep using that as a coping skill
Yeah.
because it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's been quite a few years since I've done that.
Okay. So after high school, did you seek out therapy on your own, or did you just kind of?
I did.
Okay.
I bounced around to a few until I found one that was a good fit. And then I went there and I felt better and stopped going on my own.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, big mistake.
Yeah.
I hear you.
You just decided I'm good.
Yeah.
Like the therapist didn't say you're good. You're
Right.
just like I'm good.
Yes, thank you and good night. I was
Okay.
done.
I'm healed.
Yeah.
Check, please.
So did you feel yourself slip back again?
Yes.
Ugh.
So then years later, I found another counselor that I liked and I stuck with her.
Okay.
Awesome.
And so I'm still going to counseling now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Hey, another person who calls it counseling.
Yeah, Ben and I have.
Oops.
No, it's funny. It's like this common thread.
Yes, I listened to a couple.
Yeah. Oh.
We were talking about whether it should be therapist or counselor.
Yeah, because he
Yeah.
always called it a counselor. I always said therapist. Then we kind of sniffed out. Actually, Megan sniffed out that he may have felt a little weird saying therapist because it sounds like you're really messed up. But if you're going to a counselor, it's
sounds a
like
little better.
I just need a little buffing.
Just give me some counsel.
Just a little buffing on
I
the
don't need
outside.
therapy. I just need a little counsel.
Right.
I knew as soon as she said that you were going to bring that up. So one
Any
of the
chance I get.
one of the things I'm glad you brought up is you met somebody that you connected with. We always tell people when you're in therapy, it doesn't always connect the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time.
Right.
I feel like when you call an office, let's say you call a group that has 10 therapists, they need to do like a personality test. Like not just
I
like
agree.
who's got the open person.
Yeah.
Like, are you type A? Are you introvert, extrovert? Like, I don't know. I think that would be super helpful because then if you don't hit on the first one, like if I think you would have more success at finding someone that fits you.
Right.
But yeah, the one I have now, I'm like, will not leave her.
Right. Yeah.
And I even sent her a message. She's back and she's still doing telehealth and she's got a newborn and everything. And I emailed my frustration about telehealth because I'm done with all this crap. Like, and
Yes.
but I get it. I don't judge anybody that, the way they view the pandemic. There's no problem with that. But she's like, well, I can refer you to somebody else. I'm like, no. I'll deal with the telehealth.
Right,
like,
right.
no, don't cut me. Please don't cut me. And she wouldn't, but it's just when you find somebody that just connects, then it's amazing. So, you talked about you haven't done it in a couple of years. Like, is that couple of years meaning like 2 years or like?
Many years.
Okay.
It's been many years since I've done that. And some people compare it to AA where they're always in recovery mode.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it takes a lot of mental strength to
When you're
focus on good coping skills.
yeah.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
when you're stressed, not to
Yes.
go back to
Yes.
doing that again.
So sometimes that still is the first thought that I have when I'm really stressed out or sad or angry, but I know how hard it is to come out of it.
Yeah.
So I just choose not to do it.
This doesn't relate to you at all. Hopefully it doesn't come across that I'm trying to compare, but I also, like when I'm trying to focus or if I'm in a tough situation, I will like pinch my skin a lot or something with my feet to draw. I don't know what it is to like,
Yeah.
not to the point. I don't know if it's more of a like I'm trying to focus on what it is or what, but I see for me that it feels good just because like I don't know. I'm not trying, like I said, I'm totally not trying to compare. I've talked to Megan about this. Like I don't know what it is. Like sometimes I do this and she's like, some people do. I mean, I've got tons of mental health issues in the past. Like I grew up in an abusive home. So it's a constant, I'm a constant work in progress and I'm making progress, but so I get all that baggage and stuff and how to deal with it. So moving forward as far as mental health, you feel like obviously you're going to continue, but you feel like you're in a good place now, like things
Yes.
are firing okay, other than your hiccups. Like
Right.
we all have hiccups. Like
Right.
I have them all the time, unfortunately. Ben's perfect though.
No, I'm not. You should have been in my car on the way over here.
Yeah, you
It was
did.
bad. I was on the phone with Andy. I was
Okay.
yelling about my kid.
Man.
So, so I guess the question that's coming to my mind, mainly because I have a daughter who's black and is trying to find her place in the world. Who were the people in your life around that time that you could depend on, that you found safety with? You mentioned parents. Were there any teachers or any other people that kind of shared space with you and really made you feel validated?
Yeah, my mom was a very huge support during that time and also one of my teachers.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. And it's so important even now to have like a support system.
Yeah, who's in your
People
life right
around
now
you.
that you're rock stars to like you can call at 3 a.m. and
Yeah. I have a small group of girlfriends that don't play around.
That's awesome.
If I'm just having a down day and I don't want to do anything or
Yeah.
get out the house, they don't ask me what I'm, what I want to do or what I'm going to
Yeah.
do. They tell me
Okay.
that they're coming to get me.
well
and
they know
getting
you
me
so
out the
well,
house. Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's great.
So they know like,
Yes.
oh, Jalisa's feeling down, like we need to get over there and
Yes.
let's do some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. So, one of it's not uncomfortable, but one of the things that we want to talk about is sexuality. And you're open about that.
Yes.
And, Ben and I have mostly been exposed to being heterosexual. And why don't you tell me a little bit about what that is for you, and then we'll kind of branch off on that as far as I'm just trying to I want to say it, but I don't want you to be uncomfortable with it.
No.
So you're bisexual.
Yes.
Okay. There we go. It's done. I was trying to read your eyes. I'm like, I feel daggers coming. I'm like, oh
No.
shit. Oh shit.
The cat is out of the bag.
Okay. Whew. Okay. Can move on. And, normally that's not a topic for somebody, but, that in our society, that's different. It's just different. It's not wrong or anything. And then especially in the Black community, that is not talked about. Same thing with mental health. Right. So tell me a little bit about being in the Black community and trying to deal with that. And maybe I'm off base. Maybe it's like you see that it's more accepted, but.
Oh, yeah, no.
No.
I think slowly but surely it's becoming more accepting the more that people learn.
Yeah.
And, try to have open minds about things.
Yeah.
It's funny to me when people say that it's a choice. I feel that some people may choose to have a certain lifestyle.
Right.
And I feel like others really didn't.
Yeah.
Me, I've known that I've been attracted to both sexes since middle school.
Okay.
And I was raised in a Baptist church, so that's the wrongest thing you can possibly
Right.
be.
It's more than just frowned upon. It's
Right. Straight to hell.
Right.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Straight
Right.
to hell.
Right.
So I was scared when I started to have those feelings
Yeah.
because I just knew that I was bound to go to hell.
That's tough.
And I was so scared. So I prayed and prayed and prayed for years. Prayed for God to just take those feelings away of being attracted to the same sex. And I prayed about it and I tried to knock it out of my head, and it just they never left.
Tried to pray the gay away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Right. And it never went away.
Yeah.
And within the last few years, I came out to my mom.
Okay.
So this is relatively recent then, just the whole coming out to your mom.
Yeah, that is recent.
Okay.
And her being the loving, supportive person she is.
Yeah.
We don't have the same views about it, but she's never treated me any differently.
So doesn't agree, but just still respectful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My ex-girlfriend, she loved her. She loved her kids.
Yeah.
Like, she was always so sweet. I'm very blessed that I was able to have that because I know so many people don't.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad for them.
Do you feel that people may be more judgmental because of being bi, that it might be more of a choice? Because I feel it's become more common. Okay, you're gay. You like girls, you like guys, whatever. Okay, whatever. But even compared to transsexual, I kind of feel like bios people will be like, well, you're kind of choosing, right? That's got to be weird. How do you respond to that? F off and go find a new person to talk to.
In my mind, that's what I
Yeah.
say.
Right?
Yeah.
I try to explain to people that I don't look for genders to fall in love with. I look for people. Whoever is good to me, whoever loves me,
Yeah.
whether they're male or female, doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the Baptist church and the Christian upbringing. Are you comfortable diving into that topic a little bit more? Perfect. So I too grew up in a similar setting, and the majority of churches throughout West Michigan adhere to that scripture or that teaching that it's wrong, it's a sin. So you strike me as a person very committed to your faith. I saw your license plate, which I love, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And so I guess my question for you is, I don't have a whole lot of exposure to people who are openly gay and also openly and very active in their Christian lifestyle. So if by chance there's anybody listening who comes from a background, who goes to a church in West Michigan, who might be thinking, how in the world can you be Christian and gay? How would you answer that question?
Just because someone is gay doesn't mean they don't love God. In my opinion, I feel like a Christian is someone who follows Christ. and he was all about loving and accepting. And I don't remember a time in the Bible that he turned someone away.
If he did turn people away, it was the religious leaders and zealots of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly not the common people.
No, I feel like Christians can sometimes ruin Christianity.
Yeah, I think that's a very profound and sadly true statement.
It's very sad because so many people who are in the gay community, they are Christians, but they're ostracized and are told they're not allowed to have positions in the church or, you know, do this or that in the church. I mean, just because they love someone of the same sex doesn't mean that they can't love God as well.
Sure.
You bring that up, positions. The church that you go to, are there gay people that are in position of leadership there?
The church that I currently go to, I recently started going more often, so I'm not sure of all the members quite yet.
And then the pandemic, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes everything crazy.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. As you know, I struggle with that a little bit too. Like, we talk about how Jesus didn't turn any away, but it also, I mean, I have not read it or researched it myself, so this is called bro science. But like, even in the Bible, it says, you know, that being gay is a sin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, but why? For one, I'm not. This is not a judgment. I'm just speaking of it because I'm not like feel that way. But I think that's why people struggle sometimes.
Definitely.
Like they totally get that Jesus had everyone come to him, but then yet you have this. But then in the scripture, but then you say, well, the scripture was written by not Jesus, you know, so, and it's so old. So I don't know. It's just, it's such a, like, it's just like this spinning circle and like who's right and who's
Do you
wrong.
want me to put my theology Ben hat
Yeah,
on?
but hold on before you do that. But bottom line is we're not here to judge.
No.
So
Right.
if anyone wants to do whatever they want to do, that's between them and God.
Exactly.
And as long as you're not breaking the law, of course, then we have other issues.
Right.
But
That does that a lot.
and that's what's great about this country, right? Like we can do whatever we want,
Right.
and you know, and it's fine, and it's just between me and God, and that's our relationship. That's not your relationship. It's just me and Him.
Right.
So, anyways, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, nerd.
I think a couple of things. I want to follow up on your judgment piece that you just talked about.
Okay.
I guess what I've always tried to instill in my kids is the fact that you are free to make whatever choices you want in life. You are free to do what you want in life, but you are never free from the consequences of your choices.
Yeah.
So I think that's just an important caveat. I'm not here to judge anybody, and I'm not trying to make this about you. It's just in general response to your statement.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge, but people are also responsible for the whatever consequences may come.
Right.
So, but getting back to the original train of thought, Jason was talking about the scriptures that talk about homosexuality being a sin. I'll just come out and say that I'm on the fence. You know, I read those scriptures. I've studied them. I've examined them. I can't tell you 100% that I'm on either side. I just feel like on this issue, I'm in the middle. I'm on the fence. And that angers people who are on one side, who are openly gay and affirming that lifestyle, and it angers those on the other side of the church. So I don't know. I feel like I'm okay with being on the fence because I can build relationships with both sides.
Right.
But in my studies, I have found that the verses that talk about homosexuality are very much written to a specific audience for a specific purpose in a specific time.
True.
And there's a lot of scripture like that. You look at the book of Leviticus or these Old Testament passages where, again, specific time, specific purpose, specific people. We don't do hardly any of the requirements that are found in those Old Testament passages. So that raises the question in my mind of why do we bring up the New Testament questions about sexuality? Why don't we treat those verses the same way we treat the Old Testament verses? we can easily brush off everything that the Old Testament says about wearing mixed synthetic clothing, and we can even brush off the part where in the New Testament it's talking about wearing head coverings to worship. But yet, for some reason, we get so fixated on
It's a good point.
these scriptures about
Exactly.
homosexuality. So as the fence sitter, I look to the side where my fellow staunch Christian conservative West Michigan friends are at, and my question to them is, why are you cherry picking issues in the Bible? Like, why are you picking certain sections of scripture and saying that those are true no matter what, but then you're completely willing to not be held by these others? Like, who gets to pick and choose? So
It's easy.
Yeah, I think we all pick and choose, though.
It's easy for them to point the finger about something that they're not doing,
yeah.
and it's not affecting them. So
Yeah.
it's much easier to point fingers. And those same scriptures scared me
Yeah.
when I was younger, and, you know, trying to pray the gay away and
Right.
do all that. And as I got older, I talked to many different priests and ministers and just to get their perspective on the verses that people typically have in their arsenal to chuck at you.
Yes.
Like the one you talked about in Leviticus, it also mentions, you know, not cutting your hair on the side and not
Right.
having sex with women on their menstrual cycle. And I don't think a lot of people observe those things. The Sodom and Gomorrah is what people tend to throw out as well.
Yeah.
And it's the way that they use it is not entirely true,
Yes.
because Sodom and Gomorrah was not destroyed because people were having consensual, loving, same-sex relationships.
Right.
It was destroyed because of an attempted gang rape, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that kind of doesn't add up with what they're trying to push.
Agree. Yeah.
And even in the New Testament, I can't remember where it is, there's a verse about homosexuals not entering into the kingdom of God. And I thought that was super interesting because the term homosexual didn't exist until
Right.
like the 1890s.
Ah.
And the original King James Version of the Bible was written well before that.
Oh, yes.
Well before that. And
What does the original say, or is it just not even in there?
there is a different word for
It's
it.
like debauchery or something.
Yeah, there's some term, but I realized that the word homosexual didn't really come about until like the NIV version, like
That's
the
such
new
a good point. I never even thought about that.
the new
Yeah.
international version that came out in like 73.
Hmm.
Do y'all know what was going on like a few years before that?
Before 1973? No.
Like socially, the Stonewall riots.
Stonewall, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So during that time, there was like this big gay uprising.
Okay.
People are fighting for gay rights and to have equality in the gay community. And then coincidentally, a few years later, they have this NIV version of the Bible that is condemning homosexuality.
Interesting.
I'm not saying that the people are out to get the gay community,
No.
but it just sounds fishy.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And one other point that I've
Hold on. I got to fix this. It's driving me nuts. So just go ahead. Do your
Okay.
thing. I'll edit it out.
Oh, no.
You got a lot to edit out now.
Are you
Wow.
okay?
That had to hurt.
You all right?
I just don't even know what to do after that bang.
It hurt real bad.
Ooh, wow.
Megan.
See, most our listeners aren't on Facebook or
Yeah,
so
we can edit
I can
some
edit it
things
out.
out.
But for some reason, your mic cord, I have to like mount it somewhere because you had shifted and bumped it. I'm not blaming
Oh,
you,
shoot.
but then it started buzzing. I'm like, I can't drive. That just drives me nuts. How loud was that bang in your headphones? That was pretty loud. Wasn't it?
It was a little loud.
It hurts.
It's okay.
So I'm sorry about that. I meant to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna fix this. Kaboom. So, well, are you ready to go, or I can
I
fill?
am.
Okay.
I just wanted to throw one other point out. A lot of times, verses that are now taken to be talking about homosexuality, we're actually talking about something entirely different in the original text. If you were to go back to the Greek, most of the things being discussed when there's talk of homosexual behavior is this idea of pedestry, which is essentially old men and young boys.
Yes.
And of course that's wrong. And of course but when the Bible is talking about homosexuality in some of these New Testament Greek language moments, that's what's being discussed.
Exactly.
It's saying old men are not to be with young boys. Duh. I think anybody
Right.
can agree to that. But somehow it's gotten lost in translation to where it was broadened significantly to say that all homosexual relationships are
Right.
banned. So I think the reason that I'm on the fence is because I see both sides approach this issue with a lot of love and a lot of respect. And for that reason, I just haven't really picked a side because I feel like each side does have valid arguments. Each side does bring insight to it. And as long as both sides of this issue are handling it with love, which I think they are, for the most part, there's definitely those who are not loving in
Right.
their condemnation. However, for the most part, I think a large amount of people locally here in West Michigan are really wrestling with it and trying to do so in a loving way. So I think as long as we maintain that love and mutual care for one another, I think we can get along. I don't know.
I
Well,
agree.
two things from that. One, what book nowadays do we follow that was old that we don't say is stupid? Like I'm saying about the Bible. Like I'm not saying the Bible's stupid,
Right,
but everyone's taking all these literal terms
Yeah.
and saying this is for 2020. What book out there do we read that's 500 years old, let's say, or 200 and be like, this is it? This is like, it's not. I mean, I'm not trashing the Bible.
Right,
Don't get me
right.
wrong. I mean, there's some great things inside of it, but I always struggle with that. And then Ben brought up like people in the West Michigan community in the churches struggling with it. I don't see that because I don't think anyone's talking about it.
Right.
I think that's because like it doesn't happen in my church. I mean, like it doesn't get brought up. Like how can I guess I'm asking both of you, how can the church be more? Like it's such a weird thing. Like they have to almost make a stand, right? If they're going to talk about it, they have to say we accept it or not. No, not as, well. Either we accept it or we don't.
I think it comes down to, are you truly a place where anybody, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race, I think the bigger issue with our churches in the area is they tend to be silos of people that are very similar in a lot of ways. And so you bring an outsider in who sees the world differently, they're probably not going to stick around very long. So I think
Right.
the reason why some churches, maybe most churches, aren't having such conversations is because they're silos. It's people that look just like them. And I found myself, my wife and I, we found ourselves in a spot where we were in a silo and we needed to get out. So just recently we've made a switch to a new church, and this church it's been incredible so far. I haven't even been to a service because of COVID, but I have plugged into a small group, and so is my wife. And so I think that's really what it comes down to, is the fact that you're not going to have those tough conversations if everybody looks like you, talks like you,
Exactly.
etc. I think if you're really going to affect change, then the churches have to really be who they say they are, like
Yes.
actually live out the fact that we are loving and welcoming of everybody.
Yeah, and I think every
Yes.
church says that, but do they really mean it?
Exactly.
You know. So the church you go to, I assume is fine with all of that, right? Has discussed it. Like what church is it?
Church that I go to is a CRC.
What?
I know, but it's like not your old school CRC.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, there's not.
guess which one? Church of the Servant?
Madison Square.
Oh yeah.
They're amazing.
That should have been my first guess.
And I know that I think it was them and maybe the Methodist Church were having, I don't know, votes about how they felt about
Yes.
that topic in the church. I don't even know if they've come to a.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I want a church to, because honestly, if I go to a church and they stand and they're like, yeah, we're not going to accept it, I'm out. Like, and if my church does that, I'm going to be really bummed because I love my pastor.
Right.
And so that's why I think a lot of churches don't say anything.
Right.
So when you bring up they're voting on that, I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
it's awkward, but I think it kind of needs to be done. You kind of got to make a stand on where you're going to go.
I think the CRC as a whole organization is like trying to figure out.
Oh,
where they stand
okay.
on.
So it's not
Yeah.
just Madison Square.
No.
It's
Right.
Okay.
It's- yeah, the Reformed and Christian Reformed, there's a lot going on in
Yeah.
those spheres with this issue. And I give the denomination kudos for having the tough conversations. Because it's so divisive.
Yes. It is.
So,
Well, let's transition to our next part of it, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Obviously, you're black, and
Really?
obviously,
No way.
and obviously that's in the news lately. It's been a shit show,
Right.
put it frankly. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to somebody that's black, that's living through this, because did you listen to the one with Julian? What was his name?
Julian Newman.
Did you? It was
don't
real
think so.
recent.
No.
You should check that one out.
That
It was
one
really
was
good.
amazing. It
Okay.
was so good.
But we talked about, he's a black. Well, you don't say former pastor. Like, he's not doing that as a job right now, right?
Correct.
He's
He's still very active at
right,
his
right.
church.
But I always don't want to say he's a pastor.
Yeah. Well, I think we can still say he's a pastor.
Anyways.
But,
It was a good conversation about dealing with all this crap, like, through the church. And so how are you? Like, how did that affect you with George Floyd? And as things seem to not calm down, but you're not seeing the riots other than, like, Portland and stuff like that. What is your take on all of this? I know that's a huge question, but
I'm exhausted.
yeah. Yeah. Do you see racism quite regularly at work? And
Every day.
Every day. Every day, huh?
Yeah.
really.
It's,
Wow.
I think I'm so used to it, which is sad,
Oh, that's sad.
but I'm so used to it. It doesn't bother me as much as it did. But
Okay.
somehow I'm still always surprised as the things like
Well,
people say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is never ending.
Okay.
And then you see all these things happen, and then you don't always see justice for these people.
Right.
Like that Breonna Taylor situation.
Right.
Like her
Yeah.
killers are still not arrested, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
But
By
that
the
needs
way,
to happen.
Breonna Taylor, her life mattered, and her murderers need to be held accountable. Just had to throw it out there again.
Amen.
Because it's like, have you seen the memes on Facebook where it starts talking about something completely different?
Yes.
And then it just says that statement. It's so perfect.
I love it so much.
But yeah, it's so true. Like, why haven't her family? Why hasn't her family been offered justice? Why is this still an open issue? It's infuriating.
Yes.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, there's a lot involved with it, I'm sure. Just my 2 cents on it, it sounds like it was an accident. I know I don't know a lot about it, but they basically busted into the wrong home, right?
Right.
Is that what it is? I don't know a lot about it. Maybe I should stop talking, but but I mean, I'm more focused on and not that her life doesn't matter, and I think that's why you brought it up, because everyone's focused on George Floyd and not her. But when you talk about seeing it every day, what kind of things are you seeing? I mean, you don't have to like say exactly, but it's just the way that people speak about the black community, or just blatant, like, I don't want to talk to you because you're black. I'm just curious.
I haven't had the latter. I haven't had that in a
Okay.
while. But just the way that they talk about the black community as a whole, as
Okay.
if we are less than.
Really?
Lots of microaggressions.
Mm.
I've had many people say to me, "You're so well spoken," and I'm like, as opposed to
Compared to
Yeah.
what?
like, what do you expect me to sound
Do you
like?
call them out like that? Or is it?
I'm usually so shocked I don't come back with a
Well, the
quick
problem is
comeback.
when you're at work, you're like, okay, how can I do this but not start an issue, and
Right.
then how work,
Yes.
whatever. You work for a big company, so
Right.
there's a lot of people that would get involved with that. But I
Mhm.
feel like in my personal life, if I wasn't wearing a uniform, I would probably say something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just lots of microaggressions like that. And I had one lady, she told me that she didn't really find darker girls attractive, but she wanted me to have a baby with her son because they would make
Beautiful
basically
babies.
white babies that had a permanent tan,
Ugh.
is what she said.
Oh my word.
She said, "Okay."
And people feel like they're well-meaning when they say
Right.
stuff like that.
I'm
Yeah.
like, that's
Do
a
you feel that
compliment.
the person that said that is racist?
Yes,
Oh, she is.
I feel
Okay.
that she
Yeah,
is.
I think people are.
So that's not well-meaning then. Like when I think
no.
of well-meaning is like you're not, but you said it and you didn't mean it to be that way.
I
but
think there's two different types of racist. There is a systematic racist, somebody
Yes.
who's just been programmed to think a certain way,
Right.
like that lady.
Right.
And so she had no ill will in her thought pattern.
Oh,
she
I see what you're
meant
saying.
well,
Right.
but the system that she's been brought up in and that she's engaged with all her life told her that was an acceptable question to ask, when in
Exactly.
reality it's not. So it's not like she was a blatant racist who just came
I
out
see
and
what you're
said,
saying.
Right.
I don't think you should have kids because you're black, or
Mhm.
she. So I think it's important to note racism isn't always offensive. It's not always, well, maybe that's not the right word. Racism
the purpose behind it isn't
yes,
always offensive.
It's not
There it
always
is.
meant to be to offend somebody or to cause hurt. Racism shows up in a myriad of different ways, and I think that's why
Yes.
our country is struggling so much, because rightfully so, nobody likes being called a racist.
Right.
People will say, well, I'm not racist because I don't do hateful things to black people. Okay, but let's examine your upbringing and the system that you're in. Let's be honest, is that system that you're used to, is it beneficial for the white man or for the black man?
Right.
There's just systematic things that
Mhm.
we need to deal with. And even so, yeah, so she did mean well, but I think you can be a well-meaning racist too.
There's a line to pull from the show, well-meaning racist.
Right.
Do you feel like the people that are like that are a certain generation as age? Because
Absolutely.
so not like a young 22-year-old. I feel like I don't know.
I have encountered that with someone closer to my age.
Really?
I thought we were really good friends, and she wanted me to come to her house, but I could only come at certain times when her husband wasn't home because he didn't
man.
like black people. And I'm like, yeah, that's gonna be a no for me.
Yeah.
Right? That's a friendship killer right
Yeah.
there.
That's crazy. Ben brought up background. Like when I grew up, we didn't talk about it, but it wasn't like I didn't even know anything about it.
Mhm.
Like I didn't grow up like, ooh, it's just like this is just what it is.
Mhm.
But I think that also can be bad too. Not growing up and talking about, like Ben and I mean, this is like maybe our third or fourth episode where we've talked about, racism, and it's just like no one talks about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless it's like in the news, and
Right.
that's just BS because it's
Right.
all hyped up crap. But my parents didn't talk about it. Your parents didn't talk about it, but we should talk about it.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, how can I go tell my kids about racism in a correct way? But because I feel like you don't want to draw attention to it because
Right.
like we don't talk about it either. It's just like whatever.
Mhm.
So what do you think? What can we do as white people or white men or white fathers or whatever to have that conversation with our kids or our spouse to be more, it's not, I don't know what, not the word accepting, but just to be more knowledgeable, I guess.
I would.
I know that's a big question.
If you're talking to younger kids, I would just start off by asking them, like, did you know that sometimes people aren't treated like you and I because of how they look?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
And I feel like that's a good starting question.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can dive into why.
Yeah.
And I think it's like I keep going back to this comment from Julian because it really messed with my head in a good way. I think so often we want to do it the right way. We want to say the right things to our kids. We want to have a perfect conversation with them. But in reality, it's awkward and it's messy and it's going to be messy when we talk about it. And Julian's encouragement was be okay with it being messy. Just go into it anyway. You're not going to get it right. Your kids aren't going to understand right away.
Right.
But don't let your desire to do it right prevent you from doing it at all.
That's the problem.
Right.
That's the problem. That's holding me back. I don't remember the conversation I had with Avery, our 12-year-old, but she recently got a restricted TikTok account. And do you have TikTok?
No, but I've heard of it.
You got it. Just do me a favor. I peer pressure people to get on TikTok.
And go to therapy.
I'm not saying do a TikTok, but just get an account. It will make you laugh so hard.
I've seen videos.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious.
If I am down or if I'm like tired of COVID, I'll go on there and I have tears rolling down my eyes within like 15 minutes.
But Donald Trump wants to ban it.
I was going to say, isn't it getting banned soon?
That's such a weird thing. Like,
it's because of the privacy.
Yeah, but Trump is weird. He's like 45 days. This is going to happen. I'm like, I'm not sure you can do that. Like, I don't know what's going on with that. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry. I brought up Trump.
We were talking about TikTok. Yeah, that's the problem. That's going to go down a wrong road. So what was I talking about? I was talking about TikTok.
You're talking about how TikTok makes you happy. Avery has a restricted
account. Thank you. So she's like, and I don't remember the conversation we had, and I think I need to circle back with her, and it's kind of bumming me out that maybe I didn't speak of it, but she's like, I think she said to Megan, like, what's this George Floyd thing? Because she didn't know. We have no cable news in our house. Like, they don't see any news. I don't want to watch news. I get all my news on Facebook and Twitter, which not Twitter, but Facebook, which I've snoozed the last 30 days because I couldn't take it anymore. But I don't know what we said to her. Like, what you brought up earlier, like what you should say to your kids, like, hey, people are treated different because of their color or sexual orientation. Like, I need to circle back on that because I think that's a great thing. Because she was like, what is this about? I don't know what I said. I think she said it to Megan. I'm blaming Megan. For the record, I'm blaming Megan. But I want to circle back because, because I think that's super important.
Right.
In a long talking manner.
I guess I want to move to a different question, but at the same time, I want to go back to what you said about every day facing micro forms of racism. I just want to camp out there for a little bit longer. Could you just tell us, as two white guys who are trying to figure out how we can make a difference, tell us maybe a couple more of those. Maybe they're micro things, or maybe they're just blatant displays of racism that you see. What are the things that you're seeing that perhaps we're not even aware, we being the general community?
Yeah, because we talk about this. We have these good conversations like on the podcast, and I feel empowered, and then I just go, and then I'm around white people all the time. And I'm just like, kind of forget about it. Like, I'm being honest and, forthcoming. I just don't even think about it anymore. But then you say you have to deal with that every day, and I'm just like, it hurts my heart a little bit that you have to deal with that.
So what are the things that we being a broad statement for the community at large in West Michigan, where are we getting this wrong? And because I don't think we can make any progress until we've pinpointed certain areas that we need to address. So just like to give you a chance to maybe highlight a few of those that you encounter on a regular basis.
I've heard you're pretty for a dark girl.
That's crazy to me.
Right.
But they mean no harm by it, and they are confused with my anger.
I feel like you need to specify if it was in your employment or outside of your employment, because I have a theory on the employment thing. I probably won't bring it up on this podcast because of my wife, but I'm just curious.
It was with my employment.
Okay. Anything else?
Gosh, there's so many. oh, the neighborhood I grew up in is the inner city.
Mm-hmm.
And someone was like, I never would have thought that you were from the inner city. You're nothing like them.
Oh man.
And I'm like, who is them?
Right.
That's terrible.
I'm just always surprised at the things people say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not one question we didn't. Did we ask? Yeah, we did ask Julian if he sees it, but he didn't give specifics. If he sees it even in today's. Oh yeah, he did
He
tell.
did, because he was talking about going for a jog.
Yeah, that's still. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So what was your general question? I don't want to like. What can we do? Or
No, I just wanted her to name a few things so that
Okay.
it can just jog our memory. I mean, for our listeners who are wanting to do better, maybe look at how they approach or engage with people who don't have white skin and maybe find ways to do it better.
I think the best way is to educate yourselves. There's so many resources now and books and things that you can research, especially about like the systemic racism. It's been happening for years and years, but no one really wants to believe that.
Yeah.
Like the whole Black Lives Matter movement, people are very negative towards that. And I think it's because of the term Black Lives Matter. Like, it doesn't say we matter more.
Yeah.
We just matter.
Yeah.
Like,
You matter.
we want to be included
Right.
in the live portion.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's like, if any other issue was, I mean, if any other people group was being persecuted and treated the way that the black community is, we would say they matter.
Exactly.
And so why can't black people matter? This is a time of dire need where they need to matter,
Right.
where you need to matter. And
we need to feel like we matter.
yeah,
And I feel like if you truly deep in your soul believe that all lives matter, then Black Lives Matter shouldn't bother you.
It shouldn't. It's, I don't know. I want to make a comparison to ice cream, but I feel like that's just making it so mind-blowing.
No,
Please
I want
do
to.
it.
I want to see
Do
where
it.
you're going with
Yes.
that. I'm shocked.
Do it.
I love ice cream.
Yeah, who doesn't?
So if I say I love ice cream, I can also say I love Klondike bars. One doesn't outweigh the other. Like, all lives matter. Black lives matter. We're on the same page.
Right.
Like, all ice cream matters.
That was a little. bit,
I like Klondike bars. That doesn't mean that I hate all the other.
that was a stretch. Ben.
I know.
That was a stretch.
See, I oversimplified it in my mind, but that's what it.
I
That's
see
how
where
it
you're
strikes
going.
me. Like that's how simple it should be. Like
Right.
there shouldn't be this big debacle about Black Lives Matter and no, all lives matter. It's just so. I don't know.
Do you know who Rob Bliss is?
No.
So Rob Bliss was kind of like a viral marketer in Grand Rapids for many years. You've lived your whole life, right?
Yes.
Do you remember the
Met
water
him.
The
slide
water slide downtown.
where he owed the city like 30 grand?
Oh no.
Yeah, he made this water slide, which was badass, by the way.
Was it that big inflatable?
I think it was like down Michigan Street, or
Okay.
it was.
Yeah.
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 It was like maybe 5-7 years ago. And then he did like the paper airplane thing, which just basically it was a bunch of garbage they dumped off
Right.
and they didn't fly. Like he's had a few flops. Well, recently, and I did not know when I watched this video that it was him, but he went to a pretty southern town in Arkansas and stood outside with a Black Lives Matter thing and recorded people's responses.
gut-wrenching.
And I mean,
Horrible.
you may not want to watch it, but I guess the reason I bring it up is where I feel like when I go around in town, and I know I'm white, but I don't see people be like that. So I feel like I know it is happening, but when I say to people, well, I think people are getting more woke and it's less racism, and then I see that video of in this town, I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I usually look at Reddit in the morning when I'm drinking coffee, and I was just like, with my mouth open by myself. I was like, this is still happening.
Yeah.
This is still the thought process in a lot of people's minds, and I was shocked.
It's so sad.
Yeah, I mean, it was some horrible things. I'm like, some of the things you've said, yeah, they're kind of shitty, but I mean, like, horrible
Right.
things. I'm like, okay, so we got some work to do.
For sure.
So if you
Yeah.
want to look at it just to I mean, you may not want to, but it really is a good thing to say to somebody if someone that does say to you, like, it's fine. There's no more racist. Like where I say, I don't see it. Of course, I am white, but and I watch that, I'm like, okay, this is not good.
Yeah.
Like we got some work to do.
So one thing that came up on a neighborhood page of all things.
Oh gosh, run.
I know. So I serve as a moderator on my neighborhood Facebook page, and there's a lot of Karens. But there's also somebody who posted they're biracial and they have a Black Lives Matter sign. And somebody drove by and said some very foul language, like F that sign. So it started this whole thread, and somebody shared this meme that I think sums it up pretty well. The headline is, it's actually like a political cartoon that you would find in the newspaper. The headline is Black Lives Matter, and there's a black gentleman with a shirt that says that. And then there's an angry protester holding a sign that says All Lives Matter. Next to that, they have a woman wearing a breast cancer awareness shirt. And the angry protester in that picture has a sign that says All Cancers Matter. Save the whales. All animals matter. No means no. All words matter. So it's like the All Lives Matter thing, I think it's just dangerous. So
I agree.
I think people don't understand it once you explain it to them. They're like, I mean, a normal person be like, oh yeah, you're right. This is kind of shitty. But I think people don't really, they're just like, this is fine. All lives matters. I'm like, well,
I think the people who want to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the statement that summed it up well for me was all lives don't matter until Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. And no one wants to be the bad guy. No one wants to, realize that they may have some racist thoughts or tendencies.
Sure.
And like when people talk about white privilege, I think that a lot of white people get defensive because
they do.
Sounds like they've done something wrong.
Right.
They've done nothing wrong.
No.
Yeah, it's just the way the world
You literally have
operates.
privileges
Yeah.
that I don't have. Like when I go to a shopping mall, each store, I go to my car and put my bag away before I go into the next store so that they won't think I stole something. I don't carry all my bags around.
Really? Ugh.
Or if I do, I'll drop it off at the desk, at the cashier up front.
Wow.
And people look at me, like my friends, they'll look at me like I'm crazy. Like, why are you doing that? Because I've constantly followed.
Yeah.
And I've been stopped and I've been asked to see, my bags. Mm-hmm. It's just a lot of little things like that. You have the privilege to do that, and I don't, and it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Do you think
It's
that
just the way it is.
we could retitle that in something else? I don't know, but I know what you mean when people do get fussy about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not privileged. Well, like I
Right.
could say, I'm not privileged. I was abused as a kid. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, yeah, but you, for the most part, have a pretty easy life.
Yeah.
But I feel like we need to title it something else than white privilege. Like you have white
Yeah, it's such a trigger
advantages.
word.
No, that sounds bad too.
Right.
Like I don't know.
Because that makes it sound like all of their hard work and everything that they've done in their life means nothing.
Right.
And that's just not what that means.
No.
Not
No.
at all.
Yeah. So as we head towards wrapping things up, Jason mentioned in the beginning of the episode the 3 buckets that we really strive to focus on our show, and we've hit 2 of them pretty hard, but I certainly want to give some space as we wrap up to talk a little bit more about your faith. Our 3 buckets are the mental health, uncomfortable conversations, and faith. And being a person of faith who is also Black, what has your experience been in the church community in our area?
I haven't really had any issues within the church.
Good. That's positive
That
to
makes
hear.
me happy.
Do you feel like you're more at a black church more than white people though?
No, my church is mixed.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's extremely diverse. Like there's
Oh.
not more of one race than another, and
Okay.
I love that so much.
Yeah, that was actually one of the churches we were considering.
Madison Square.
Mm-hmm.
That
Okay.
church is so amazing.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So my wife and I just came to a point where we're like, if we're gonna really live out what we believe, then we need to find ourselves in a little bit different spot. So
Yeah, because how do we do that? Like, that's the thing that we've brought up. Like, if you're not a person of faith, like, how do you reach out to people that are different color? Like,
Yeah.
I literally don't deal. Like, I have no friends. It's just, how do we include ourselves in more of the Black community if you don't go to church? Because the church is an easy one to do, right? You just go to a more diverse church. Okay, problem
Yeah.
you
solved.
could adopt a Black child.
I could do that. I'm 44. I'm done with kids.
That was tongue in cheek.
I saw a toddler since my kids were gone, and she was just like screaming at her dad. I'm like, nope. I'm so glad I'm done with that.
But that is a fair question.
Yeah.
So if we want to broaden our circles, how do you do that?
There are many networking opportunities, events that are branched off from like Black-owned businesses
Oh,
and
really?
things, and
Even
you can
locally?
find them easily. Oh yeah, you
Wow.
can find them easily on social media,
Okay.
especially like flea market type things, and just going and meeting and mingling with new people.
Yeah.
I think that's a good start.
Would you feel, well, I'm not even going to ask it that way. Let me start over. How would you feel if a random white person just showed up and was like, I want to have more Black friends?
Yeah, I know it sounds so bad, right? But like, their intent is good.
Right.
Because I do want more Black friends. Like,
Right.
I do, but I don't, I don't work in a place that,
Right.
I work with 4 guys. We're all white. That's the extent of it.
Me being me, I wouldn't be offended if there were good intentions behind it. I would be open to that. I mean, that's how you meet new people.
Yeah.
I also say results are not typical, so I can't tell you that'll work for everybody.
Right.
But I would be open.
Yeah. Because one thing that I've been realizing in my journey is it's not enough for me to just make sure that I send my daughter to places where she's not the minority. I mean, that's a great first step. And
Right.
it took a lot of work to even get to
Yes.
that step. But that's not the end of the journey for me. My journey needs to incorporate not just making my daughter feel comfortable and around people who look like her, but she also needs to see me and my wife and our son. She needs to see that her family is also seeking to broaden their circles. And I think it's just so important. So
Let's go back to the church. I know
Yeah.
we kind of cut you off. You said your church is good, you feel. Have you experienced issues in prior churches, or why did you change churches to begin with?
I was just ready for a change.
Okay.
The Baptist church that I was at before everyone there was very loving. They were also very stern in their beliefs.
Mm.
And there wasn't a lot of room for new ideas
yeah.
and new ways of thinking. If you try to teach someone or explain to someone, a situation, if they already have what they believe in their head, they're not going to change. They have to want to be open. And I just felt like it was a good time to be able to move and experience that.
It's so good. I'm glad you found a place
Me
at
too.
Madison Square. I've heard great things. So I'm glad that it's panned out for you and that it's been meaningful. This is one of those interviews. I felt like this at the end of Julian. It's just like I could sit here and talk all night.
I know.
And like I just feel like I just want to learn and grow, and I just love these conversations. But all good things must come to an end.
Right.
I just don't know how to wrap this one up, so I'm going to default to Jason.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and being open. I know when I originally reached out to you, you're like, I'm not interesting, but you. Oh, you know what? Before we wrap, let's talk about your life coach thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's give
Can
you
we
a
touch on that?
platform.
Yeah,
Talk about what
yeah,
you do.
because I remember seeing that on your profile.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously that has a lot to do with mental health. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap. I should have wrote that down. I'm glad I
we always
remembered.
want to further our guests' initiatives, so
Right.
please tell us.
About 4 years ago, I took a course to be a certified life coach. And basically, people tend to think a counselor or a therapist and a life coach are the same, but they're not.
No.
Usually, a therapist will tend to kind of dive into your past and figure out what happened and try to help you process through those things. A life coach will focus more on the present and future.
Okay.
So it's more about setting goals and reaching those goals to further advance yourself.
Okay.
And I chose to have my specialty in mental health.
Awesome.
All right.
Very cool.
So how does that work if someone wants to reach out to you or?
I usually, since COVID,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID.
I think we've brought that up like 6
Yeah.
times.
Right.
Like it's really messed with our flow.
it really has. It's usually like video chats
Okay.
or phone calls. Before COVID, I would be able to like go to their homes, or we would meet out in public and we
Right.
would make a plan of like what their goals were, and then we make sub goals to be able to work to it.
Okay. Cool.
I love it so much.
So how can someone reach out to you? Like, do you have social media?
I
There's an
do.
email or?
I have Positive Ambitions
Okay.
LLC,
All right.
Awesome.
and that is a Facebook page.
Okay.
It's my business page, and I can be reached through there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll share that in the show notes when we
Thanks.
post the episode on Friday. So, well, thanks again. I appreciate the time. It's always good to have different types of people in here to get different perspectives. And thank you being a friend to Megan. I know you guys are good with each other.
Yeah.
Like she's like, I knew a ton about you before.
Oh.
Even you got like all good stuff.
Good.
Like, she's like, oh, Jalicia's going through a thing. And it's like, oh, I feel so bad. You know, like just,
Yeah.
Just to let you know, like, if you don't want Megan to tell me, you better tell her before you tell whatever you're going to tell. And I think that's implied with all spouses. But
Yeah.
so, got anything else?
No, I just wanted to thank you for sharing your story, just diving in the deep end from the get-go, and just being willing to be transparent. That's what we're all about on the show. So
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Megan yelled something from up top. I don't know what it was. Probably like, I don't know, something because I said